Rappin' with ReefBum is sponsored by Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine.
Hey, what's happening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Rappin' with ReefBum. I'm your host, Keith Berkelhamer. So today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Raj Shingadia to the show. What's happening there, Raj?
What's up, Keith?
Not much, man. We almost didn't pull this off on time. We had a little some gremlins going on here, and it's I don't know. Maybe it's the reef therapy technical curse, perhaps.
It might be. It might be. But you know, it's now tradition. So if we didn't have those technical difficulties to start off with, something's wrong.
Yes. So I feel good that we solved the problem in the nick of time when we got on YouTube on time. So I see there's a bunch of people already out there viewing what's happening there, folks. Just real quickly, for people that don't know Raj, he holds a Bachelor's of Science and a Bachelor's of Arts from the University of Georgia. He is the owner of Reef Builders and is also the co-owner of MRC. He has 20 years plus of industry experience in aquarium maintenance, fabrication, design, and implementation, as well as industrial sales and marketing leadership skills. His work has been featured on national design shows and internationally in public zoos and aquariums of all sizes, and he has been a guest speaker at various aquarium and entrepreneur conferences around the United States. But before we start chatting with Raj, I want to thank the sponsors for this show, both Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine. Appreciate them supporting this live stream, and also appreciate all you folks out there tuning in to watch. Please hit that like button. I know we're over 50 viewers right now, only 17 likes. Let's get that bumped up there a little bit so more people can find us. And as always, comments, questions are welcome in the chat. So, man, how you doing? What's going on these days, Raj?
Man, it's busy. It's a new year, so it just kind of focusing on closing out 2023, your ups, your downs, all everything in between, and trying to make a new path for 24, which is off to a start, right? Like it's a crazy weather down here, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, we've got big storms right now. So we're my city is actually under a flood warning, which is odd because I live right in the foothills of mountains, and I I'm at the top of a hill. I never thought flooding would even be a consideration of an issue here, but this, yeah, we're in a flood warning. So there we go.
Yeah, we have some interesting weather coming through. We have some snow, so we're probably going to get like 5 to 8 inches of snow, and then we're going to have some fierce, like 50 to 60 mile an hour, possibly 70 mile an hour gusts, and then rain, and then maybe back to snow by tomorrow morning. So
Wow.
it's going to be rocking and rolling here.
Yeah, yeah. Fortunately, we don't see a lot of snow, but I am in New York the rest of the week, so I think I'll get to see a bit of it up there.
Yeah, for sure. So man, you got a lot going on, dude. You got 2 companies to worry about now, and but Raj, talk to us about how you kind of like got all involved in the business. You know, what's your reef keeping journey been like?
Journey's been crazy, and it continues to get even crazier. But you know, this industry was never supposed to be a business for me because it was just my hobby. It was a passion, and I really just fell into the business end of things, and ended up being good at what I do, and you know, kind of carving out that niche, and just I really dove into the deep end, and I tend to do that a lot with things. So it's just crazy how that happens. But you know, I mean, I was going to school to be an attorney, and I'm Indian, and Indian parents really only give us a couple of options on what we're allowed to be when we grow up. You know, I could be a doctor or I could be an attorney. And then you get like the third option, which is, all right, maybe you could be a dentist because it's still medical. And, you know, you get a lot of maybes, but aquarium guy was definitely not on that list. So when I had to make this call from school, when I, you know, made that call, called my mom, and I realized that I had a really good professor that told me that's like, Raj, you're really good at this part of law, which is being in court. I loved that part of it. And I hated the paperwork part of it. And so he sat me down and he was like, you know, your law career is not going to be the big showboating in the court. Like, you're not going to be this big trial attorney out of the gate. You're going to have to work your way up. And this is mostly what you're going to do, is all the stuff that you hate. So just prepping. So yeah, I had to make that call to my mom and say, you know what, I'm not going to finish this part, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And so, yeah, I had to deal with a lot of crying, a lot of, you know, I was like the one that was supposed to do all these things. And so started my career off with disappointing my mom. Worst thing you can do.
Yeah. So how did you make the transition into I mean, basically it was MRC, right? Is that kind of like how you got going in the business?
Not really. I did. So in college, I had a reef tank. It was a 29-gallon reef tank, and I did a lot of tinkering and a lot of reading. I researched everything that I possibly could. And back then, you know, this was in the late 90s, like 99 to early 2000s, and the internet wasn't what the internet is today. So limited resources online. But I had the University of Georgia Science Library, you know, right there. And I could go, and at this point you would have to look things up on the computer and then go find the journal that article or that study is in, photocopy it, bring it back so you can go through and read them all. So it was really interesting. But back then, Reef Central was the big forum, and then there was Reefland. Reefland was smaller, but a lot nicer, like a better community. So I started tinkering then, you know, building ballasts, like metal halide ballasts.
Really?
Doing them better than, the stuff that you were finding. So, you know, I made a contact, opened up an account at an electrical warehouse, and just collected the parts and was starting to assemble them. So just kind of got into, I guess, the business end of it there. I was doing coral grow outs, and years later, then, my basement was covered with your low boy
Yeah.
troughs, and
Yeah.
I would get brown colonies from Sea Dwelling and ERI and all those guys. I'd be like, give me the stuff that you don't want, you're going to throw out, you can't sell. I'll take all your browns, knowing that I'm going to blast them with lights, and I would grow them out with 6,500 Iwasaki's,
Yeah.
and then move them into your 20K, super blue halides, and see what comes out of them. Some of them, they're just brown. Others, all kinds of colors would come up, and I would have just gotten, these big colonies. And back then, remember, colonies were like the size of our heads.
Yeah.
They were big.
Yeah.
And, I would have gotten them for next to nothing. So started wholesaling those out to stores and going to the local reef club and selling frags. So really started off small.
And this was this was all like in college or right after college, or
this was after college.
After
so
college.
This was, I'm working, and the big thing was like, hey, I've got a career, making money. I want a big aquarium. And this was 04, 05 at this point now. And yeah, I got a 10-foot by 3-foot by 3-foot aquarium. And it was going to be a full blown out reef. And, large aquariums in a home back then wasn't really a thing like it is now. So, and if it was a thing, it wasn't really, you didn't have that peer-to-peer contact because the internet wasn't as connected as it is today.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of journey that I had to do by myself. And that's when I got into the equipment end of things, is going through the different brands that were available and figuring out what I like, what I don't like, and just how things work, how physics to play a role in things, and how I thought they should be designed. And I bought stuff from all over the place. And granted, a lot of them weren't really designed for that large of an aquarium. So, you tried to double up, or you tried to get custom stuff built, but it was all based on just how things were done. And I thought that they should be done a little bit differently, but you can only complain for so long. And, you come up to that put up or shut up moment, and I went for it. I put up, and that's where I got involved with MRC. And then here we are today, just
Yeah, no, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, I can kind of relate to that, because when I was just getting back, when I was getting into the hobby, I was living in New York City, in an apartment building. And I just remember it was a lot of, it did take a lot of researching to try to figure out how to set up a system, how to set up a tank, and get all the different pieces of equipment. And and what was, what I didn't really have available to me was like a local fish store where I can kind of get that guidance and all that stuff. I don't know if that was something that that you tapped into or not, but it's kind of like it was kind of an exciting time, but it was also confusing to me. I remember one time I was I just figured I needed to get some sort of chilling option for my small little, I think it was like a 90-gallon aquarium that I had in this apartment, which probably was not supposed to be in the apartment, but because we're on a 5th floor or 4th floor, whatever it was. And I remember trying to track down, I didn't have the money to buy a chiller or something like that. So I remember going and trying to track down a decommissioned water cooler in some sort of warehouse in New York City. And I got one for a guy. Yeah, this doesn't work. If you could figure out how to make it work, then it's yours. And I took it, and I couldn't figure out how to make it work. But so that's just kind of an oddball story. But I hear what you're saying.
That's funny, because I was in the automotive industry, and one of the ideas was, again, trying to solve the heat issue. In Atlanta, it gets hot, and chillers are expensive, and then running a chiller is very expensive. So I thought, hey, in the automotive world, we're cooling cars that are hitting much higher temperatures, and it's the temperature differential that we're looking for, and it can pull down a serious temperature differential there. So what if I took that, and you can get a car radiator for very, very cheap. So I got that, got the fan assemblies, and I'm thinking, all right, I can just run coolant through that and have a titanium barrel that is going to be downstairs or, with my sump, put the car radiator outside, and this should work. And I mean, it did. It worked great, except for it was pretty janky because, I had to rig up this 12-volt system to run those fans, and it had to be enough amperage there to keep them going. And it's sitting there outside of my house, not really looking so great. And so it just kind of evolved from there. And I came up with a Peltier device that would go inside the home. And that's really dealing more with evaporative cooling. And that thing made a ginormous mess, but it cooled really, really well.
Brandon Scott Art says, an old lobster tank was my first chiller. Yeah, you gotta be a little innovative and think outside of the box. When you're reefing on a budget, that sort of thing is necessary. So. But I guess these days most people don't need chillers because most people are running LEDs.
Well, if they're not, they're pretty soon have to be, because those halides just are not available, and they're forced into it. So there you go.
I was a long time advocate of metal halides, and I always had sworn that I would never go to LEDs, but then I did go to LEDs, and I'm not looking back. I mean, in Atlanta, like in a hot area like that, is still heat an issue for a reef tank even lit by LEDs? The most reefers are around that down south have to think about ways to keep the tanks cool, like just keep them in basements or something like that, or running the AC in the house. I guess, is that a common thing?
Yeah. I mean, yes, we run our ACs almost year round down here, but it gets hot, and heat's still an issue because you have other heat sources in your aquarium, right? All the pumps that are in there contributing to it. I mean, your tank is insulated, so it's maintaining the heat in there. What else? UV, just anything that's really using electricity is giving off some sort of heat. So eventually you do run into those issues.
Yeah. Just seeing some more comments about radium bulbs. Rich Colombo, I have enough radiums for 10 years. I think Chris Meckley has got the same stash of radium bulbs here. Or metal halides. That
stash is worth a lot of money.
Bulbs. Yeah,
that stash is gold right now.
Yeah, for sure. So, Raj, I want to get back to talking about MRC in a little bit, but let's talk about Reef Builders, man. You bought Reef Builders. What's that journey been like in terms of Reef Builders?
That was a decision of passion. It's not really a business. Wasn't a business decision, and still is not a business decision. That was emotional and done out of passion. I mean, I was friends with Jake for a long time. I mean, Jake was working at a pet store in Atlanta. So it's go way back. And Reef Builders and back then for me, it was just something so special. And I saw what it can do for brands. And I saw what it did for my own brand. When Jake would write something about MRC and it had an immediate impact. And so when you're growing a company, all those little things mean so much. So I understood what the power there was, to help the industry. And then you look at where everybody turns to for their news and their information. I mean, it's Reef Builders, right? Like, what's your go-to source for that type of stuff? It was always Reef Builders. And the thought of it disappearing, it just didn't sit well with me. And the thought of it being almost bastardized, right? Becoming something that Jake wouldn't have wanted it to become. I don't know. It just wasn't a great feeling. And so I thought, why not? Let me see if I can keep it going in, the same vision that he had, at least, and some of the ideas that he had spoken about, after hours when we're just chatting, things that he wanted to do with the platform and things he wished he could have pulled off with more people and just more funding. And I thought, well, now's the time to give it a shot, because obviously nobody can replace Jake,
Yeah.
right? I'm sure as hell not going to
Yeah.
replace him, but can we do something that honors him and keeps what he built going? And that's the goal, and that's what we're trying to do. And the team is pretty spectacular, and it's filled with great people. It's one of the things I only want to be and work with people that are good people that I like, that are just genuine and have a genuine love for this hobby and this industry. And when you're working and you're doing something with passion, you're doing something that you love, you know what the end result is, right? Like it's just so much better. So it's kind of the goal. That's kind of where we want to go, and hopefully that's where we'll be, and people can embrace it. And I think we've gotten over a lot of those humps.
I mean, any major challenges that come to top of mind in terms of trying to achieve the objectives?
Oh gosh, yes. There's always challenges. It's funny. There's a lot of support, and then there was a lot of anti-support. Right? There's a lot of vitriol that came out. Some of my favorite comments were they were so angry, and there's just people that were like, "You suck. You're not Jake Adams. You're never going to be Jake Adams." And it was just went on like that. I was like, "Holy crap! Okay, yeah, this is great." But just I guess people expecting it to be the same, and it can't be the same, and it's impossible, right? And then just them getting disappointed and angry because it's not the same. And that was a difficult hurdle, and just kind of people getting hung up on it. And it was difficult because, Windsor is part of the company, and she can see and she reads all the comments. And one of the things that she does is social media. And so she's answering all these people. And when a lot of those comments were coming back, and just the negativity was really getting to her. It was really, I mean, who wants to hear all of that? They've just lost the love of the life, and now they're having to deal with all of this. That was really, really difficult, because I wanted to go just nuclear on people.
And that's usually not a good idea in social media.
It's not a good idea. No, it's not. But yeah. And so just kind of balancing all of that was a challenge. Balancing just different aspects of what was going on in the world. And yeah, lots of challenges.
Chris Carney, it takes a team, and thank you, Raj. John Wright, Remy is great, and hope you can eventually get Mark back. Tyler C88, I think what you did with Reef Builders is awesome. You've done a great job keeping it going, in my opinion. Chris C. Raj, do you even reef, bro?
Oh God, I got a lot about my Wall Street picture. Gosh, man, if I had to redo that one, maybe I would have put a pic with me in a tank.
Yeah.
But, that was one of those where Marissa just asked me for a headshot, and I was like, "Oh, okay, here's my headshot." I didn't even think about it. It wasn't something that was on my mind. It wasn't. Oh God, yes. I mean, talk about not really thinking things through. I didn't even think about it at all. I was just like, "Oh, this is a great picture of me. Here you go," because that's what I use on the business side of things, in the business world, is that headshot. So I heard headshot, I spit out the headshot.
Most people only have one headshot, so when you're asked for it, that's what you send along, right?
Yeah, that's what you send. I've learned now that I need
more than one headshot.
Yeah.
Big ES. People were pretty rough on Raj and Remy in the beginning. Glad to see them prove those people wrong. Yeah. No, it's dude. I don't know how you navigated through all that negativity, but kudos to you to rising above it. And it's tough, because like I was we're just kind of making fun of it. It's like you can't go nuclear on social media, and usually the best thing to do is to just ignore the trolls. But sometimes it gets a little too personal, and you got to figure out a way to handle it behind the scenes.
Yeah, well, I mean, personal attacks is one thing. Like, people telling me that I suck. Okay, that's fine. What bothered me more was like when they would go after Remy and, just part of the team, the team members, that would bother me more than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I hear you.
yeah.
All right. A couple of random questions from the viewers here.
Sure.
So Apartment Reef, you had a comment or question before that I thought was, the comment was about shipping and about me winding down shipping corals across the country. And so I guess the question potentially to talk about is how do we feel about the current state of coral shipping? I don't know. Do you have an opinion on that, Raj?
I mean, corals, just corals, period. I think there's going to be some pretty big shakeups, over the next, I don't know how many years, but these international shipments are going to get tighter and tighter. So it's going to be very heavy aquaculture.
Yeah. I think what Apartment Reef is referring to, I sell corals online and I ship across the United States out of my basement, coral farm here. So, and for me, living in Vermont, it's a rural area. My costs for shipping are higher than other parts of the states that are more located to closer to cities and what have you. Anyway, the net is I decided to slowly bow out of the shipping business because it's so freaking expensive, and just the reliability of the next day air service and all that sort of thing with delays and packages taking 2 days to get there and DOAs and trying to go crazy and filing claims. It's like, forget about it. It's like,
shipping is a bear these days. I mean, yeah, like you said, it's super expensive. The guarantees are all gone and the claims process is murder.
Right.
Like obviously I don't sell live stock, but we had an order that went out over 6 months ago. The freight company completely trashed it, and we still haven't gotten a resolution from them. We're doing everything we can. We just have to redo it, fund it, and move on. But
you need a full-time person really to fight.
Yes.
To do the claim stuff. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I spend hours, over a $50, trying to get a $50 credit or something like that. It's not a good use of my time. Yeah. But I just feel like, it's not right, and there needs to be justice done. So I feel like it's worth fighting the fight. But I think what I've been kind of wondering about, and I've seen some other folks. I think Paletta did write an article on Reef Builders about this in terms of the some things going on in the hobby and local fish stores really feeling the pinch and some sellers going by the wayside. But I kind of wonder in terms of the online coral business and what that's going to look like in a few years if we keep going the way we're going with the shipping business. And it's just it's so freaking expensive and just with the reliability issues. I think it's tough. The overhead is huge.
It is, and I can see it becoming more of a seasonal thing where people in the colder locations aren't going to ship certain months. That's just going to kind of have to be what it is, or get better packing material. I mean, at a certain point, it's tough, but you can't rely on that next day service anymore. So you have to pretty much pack as if though it's going to take 2 days.
Yes, I've started to about a year ago, I think it was. I started to pack all my corals with oxygen, and put activated carbon in the bags and all that sort of thing. And by and large, things do make it 2 days. I've got a pretty good track record. And I think the one wild card is temperature. So if a box is sitting out in the cold weather and you got heat packs, I've done experiments myself where I've put heat packs in box, and left it outside in 40 to 50 degree weather overnight. And which is probably not realistic, because if a box is sitting in a hub overnight and it's being delayed, it's probably not going to be that cold. But I did do that kind of extreme test, and it didn't turn out well. Even with the heat packs I had in there, the temperatures got down into the high 50s. So it's tough. But I mean, a general question from Ellery: what and the comment is, so due to the economy and inflation, how does Raj think the industry will react to the number of hobbyists decreasing? I guess that's what Paletto was saying, in the sense that the pandemic, we had a big boon of people entering the hobby, and now the economy is kind of turning around a little bit, and some folks seemingly are getting out of the hobby.
I mean, you do get people that leave the hobby, but the one thing that seems pretty stable with hobbies is the fact that it is a hobby and people want them. Because it's not a need, it's a want. You always have that cycle. So you're going to get people on the fringes, right? People that just bail completely and say, I just can't afford to have this hobby. But in the most part, people stay in their hobbies and people enter the hobby as time goes on. So I don't really think that's going to have much of an effect. It'll change the way that people do things. So, in a down economy, maybe people don't buy as much. Maybe they just take longer to buy, things like that. But, there's so many creative finance options now where you've got pretty much every website that'll offer you terms on things, and you can do payments.
That's crazy.
Hell, it's really crazy. I mean, I bought a thermostat the other day on Amazon, and it just popped up. It was like, hey, do you want to pay us over 3 months? There's no fees or anything. We'll just, instead of $100, we'll charge you $33 a month. And I was like, okay, whatever. I'll take the 33 a month option just because why not?
Do you guys, well, you guys don't do any direct to consumer type of stuff, right? So you don't,
We don't, no, we're just B2B.
Yeah, I see that all the time, and I'm like, well, that's not something I would even consider doing. So I want to collect all the money right up front and leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, for the vendor, this now goes back to my automotive days. The vendor gets their money up front. They just take a small hit, and the finance company, they wait for their money.
Right. Yeah.
But, as the margins get thinner, that becomes tougher to do. So have to make sure you're dealing in the right goods.
John Wright, lots are getting out of our hobby who have had tanks for years, but can't afford to run their tanks anymore in England. Yeah. I saw this question pop up before. Bucky Solomon, pronouncing probably wrong. What's your so this is Raj. What's your favorite reef project to work on? Where does Polo Reef rank among all the projects? So I guess maybe we should back up a little bit and just explain a little bit, Raj, about MRC and what you guys do there in terms of products sold and services. And
Sure, yeah. So we're a science-based manufacturer, right? We do actual R&D, and we're based here in the U.S. 100% of the manufacturing is controlled in our own facility. And what I mean by science-based, we do research and development on products, and it takes multiple years to actually go through those trials. So we go through the scientific process when we come up with something. So let's say we create a skimmer. We're going to select a pump, or we're going to be involved in the creation of that pump, and we're going to see what it's capable of doing and what we can make it do. And then we will create a skimmer body that works specifically for that pump. And the way that most skimmers are built is there's a generic skimmer body built, and they slap a pump on it, and there you go. It's a new model, right? You will have the same body, different decals, maybe different pumps, and they're different skimmer models. Now, we'll then use those skimmers on test systems, and then we'll also put them into public aquariums and get their feedback on what they're doing. So, you can calculate. There's pretty known givens. Like if I'm eating a pound of food a day, we can calculate what kind of waste that's going to produce, and then you can calculate what it's going to take to remove that waste. And so when you're using those numbers to create the entire product line, you have very accurate, or as accurate as possible, ranges for what that product can apply to. And then we get that secondary feedback from the public aquariums because they are notorious for abusing those ratings. If you tell them this is good for 1,000 gallons, they're going to stick it on a 2,000-gallon tank. They're going to overload it. Pretty typical. Kind of what I did with my tank anyway. And then we can adjust from there. But we're mostly known for our much larger gear. We deal with a lot of high-end builds, a lot of public aquarium stuff. So, brought up Andrew Sandler. He obviously uses a lot of our equipment, and his office tank that's going in, the 2,500, is all fully decked out with our equipment. When that finally gets all finished and plumbed up.
I saw it in person this past fall, man. That thing is like, that is like a work of. I was drooling just over that 2,500-gallon tank versus like the 17,000-gallon tank. But yeah, pretty sick. All right, you know what? I kind of screwed up because I diverted to MRC, but I wasn't done asking you questions about Reef Builders. So we're gonna pivot back to Reef Builders, but then we're gonna get into the thick of it in terms of MRC. So what I wanted to talk to you about was content on social media content, and I guess specifically the YouTube channel. So you guys have been continuing the reef therapy, and I see that you have different, different series of hosts. So that's pretty cool. Is that the game plan moving forward? Is to kind of just mix it up in terms of the hosts for reef therapy?
Yeah. So just bringing in guests. We had to shake it up. We had to try some different things, and we wanted to bring in some other just information, other viewpoints. And so guests were always kind of part of that consideration. And, Remy and I are still going to be, I guess, the co-hosts. Remy does an amazing job. Without him, I think it would be a disaster if I had to lead that. So I'm very, very lucky and honored that he's up for that challenge and really taking that role.
He's in the chat there. Bahama Llama Coral. What's up there, Remy?
Oh, look at that. What's up, Remy? If I knew he was going to be listening, I wouldn't be saying nice things about him. But just bringing in some different perspectives with guests is right now the game plan. And then we have ladies take over.
Right.
So getting that viewpoint has been pretty spectacular.
Yes. I was thinking of I wanted to do an episode of Rappin With ReefBum where I would have my wife be the host. So I would take the night off, and she would interview the better half of one of my prior guests.
That's cool.
It's just, man, it hasn't worked out because keep my wife would be I think an awesome host, but she's never done a live stream or anything like that. But the potential guests that I've been trying to reach out to, just not getting 100% buy-in on that. So if anybody's got any ideas on that end, feel free to reach out to me to make any recommendations. But I don't know, man. Then you guys started doing the ladies the hosting show. I was like, let Reef therapy run with that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And I hope so far, we've gotten a lot of great commentary on it and a lot of support. So I hope that continues.
Amy says, more ladies takeovers, please.
Oh, they're in the works. They're definitely in the works.
John Wright, love the ladies therapy. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Wade Rouse, the ladies are good. Yes, for sure. John Wright, Remy is amazing. All right, we're getting a lot of love for the reef therapy hosts. Yeah, for sure.
That's good.
So, and on the, I guess you could say the print side. Is that what we could say? The blog side.
I guess so.
The blog side of things.
Yeah.
Is the plan still to have the Palettas and the Sanjays out there contribute content? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and we've got some fresh talent that are going to be contributing some articles here. We've got some big plans this year, so you'll see some new names in there, and then obviously some of the old names, like the Palettas and the Sanjays, that they're not going anywhere. And then Jeremy, he's our senior writer and editor, And so he churns out a lot of content, and he's actually located in the UK. So he scours all of Europe for news, just trying to be, trying to get everybody all the stuff that's going on first and get you information directly from the sources.
Yeah, no, that I think that's very useful. Like you're saying, I mean, basically, Reef Builders is kind of seen as the authority in terms of news, of industry news. So I think that's absolutely, definitely an important part of what you guys do, and good to hear that you're got those plans. So
Definitely.
More MRC questions. All right, we'll get back to those. Reef stock. Let's talk about reef stock. So is it basically the two reef stock shows coming in 2024 going to be Denver and Chattanooga?
Denver and Chattanooga. Yep. So Denver is coming up now pretty soon, March 2nd and 3rd. And then Chattanooga towards the end of the year, end of August, 24th and 25th.
And what about Australia? No commitment yet for Australia, or has that changed? The plans changed there?
Now, not Australia this year, but we have not abandoned Australia. We're still trying to sort that out. We ran into some issues with that show, so that was a difficult, really, really difficult and very expensive decision to have to back out of that. People don't quite realize that it's not just, we're not doing it. There's a lot of money that has to be paid out, and that goes just right down the drain.
That must have been a tough decision.
Very, because I've never been to Australia. Neither has my wife. So, I think a lot of people on our side was very excited to have a work reason to go out there. And delivering that news was not good. Not good. So if you want to have a spouse on to hear about how big of an asshole I am about canceling that and all kinds of other things, let me know.
You got one of your clients in the chat there, Polar Reef by Andrew Sandler. What's happening there, Andrew? Any plans for other U.S. cities, or are you pretty much going to stick to a 2-city formula?
We looked at a lot of cities, and we would love to actually move the show around a bit just to get, to bring it to some new places.
East Coast. Northeast.
Hey, Chattanooga's East Coast. Northeast. Yeah, Northeast is definitely a consideration there. But it's very difficult to get a venue that can support and that will support a reef show. We're dealing with water. A lot of venues don't want that, or their requirements or fees are really high because of that. Hotel rates, and then just things to do around there. There's some great venues that reached out and they were like, bring it here. We'll give you a sweetheart deal. We'll fly you out. Come check, come stay here for the weekend, and we'll show you the ropes. But yeah, it's tough.
I'm seeing Great Bearded Reef Paul says, come to Boston. Amy says Toronto. Josh Allen, we need a real New York City show, not in the slums of New Jersey. let's not get into the gutter there.
I'd love to do a real New York City show.
So talking about a real show, I mean, I remember Jake saying that he was talking to me before he passed, and he was saying like, oh, you got to come to Restock, you got to come to, it's like a real, it's a real show, it's different. Any plans in terms of Restock, and is the format going to be pretty much what it has been, or are you guys going to be tweaking it along the way?
Oh no, we did some tweaks last year, which went really well, and so we've got some new tweaks this year in the mix. And as we get them under our feet, we've got some new ideas that are going to be put in place. A lot of things, I've been on both sides. I've been an attendee and I've been a vendor, so I know what I want, what I personally wanted as a vendor, and I know what I wanted to see as an attendee. And we've gotten a lot of feedback from other vendors and from other attendees to see, are these ideas out of line? And then we have all the things that Jake wanted to explore and do. And not all of them are going to work out. That's just kind of the nature of the beast, is that some ideas sound great, but maybe they don't play out well in reality. So yeah, we've got some new things in motion, and we're slowly rolling them out. Evie's our show manager, and she's got a lot to deal with when it comes to that, but she's really owning it. And I'm super, super thankful and excited for that, because it's a lot of work and there's a lot of moving parts, but the team she's put together is phenomenal. So I have no doubt that it's going to be a lot of fun, because we're still keeping the original spirit of the show. As Jake wanted it to be more personable, not these giant shows where you just get lost and you don't really get to hang out with people that you want to hang out with and have that community. And so we want to keep that sense of community and keep that sense of what I call the aquarium lifestyle going,
Well, I went to the show last year, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was a blast. I really enjoyed myself, and it was just it was it definitely reminded me more of kind of like a frag swappy type of show versus like an industry trade show type of deal. So
yeah, it's a bit of a hybrid, and so we've got more speakers now than traditionally in the past, because we've ramped up that education side of it. We limit the number of coral vendors that are going to be there, because we don't want it just to be a big coral swap, predominantly. And we want to provide value for the coral vendors that are there. And then you have part trade show. And so you have your manufacturers, but we're also really pushing for workshops where attendees can get hands-on experience and training on the equipment that they're interested in, or maybe they're afraid of. This was many years ago. We did this at an MRC booth, but we ran a calcium reactor workshop. We did this multiple years, and it was really interesting. The feedback we got is that it's, you can read about it, you can talk about it online, but having somebody walk you through, this is how you actually set it up, and this is how you tune it, and this is how you use it, and this is why, that makes a big difference.
Yeah, and calcium reactors are complicated because, especially if you're getting into the hobby, you've never used one before, there's a lot of different variables in play that can impact what you're putting out in terms of that DKH. So yeah, I think hands-on and aquascaping, that's always like a lot of fun to see people do those kind of like demonstrations live or in person. So it's that sounds great. Polo 1126, thank you so much for that super chat. Glad I could catch some of this one. Did I miss how Raj's tank is coming along? Oh, he's asking about the tank.
Oh, always got to get burned. It's so I had some trouble with one part of the sump, and I say I had trouble because I changed what I wanted it to look like, overcomplicating it, and finally got that sorted out. And I specifically spent time, like, we're going to just dedicate some time right now. We're stopping work and we're going to work on this sump. And so that's almost done now. So as soon as the sump is done, I can start plumbing this thing and getting some water.
So it's not even
we
wet
have
yet,
made progress. No, but this is huge progress. Okay.
And for those of us that don't know, how big of the tank, how big of a system is this? And
it takes 120 gallons. It's 72 by 24 by 16 tall, rimless.
Nice. I like the height. I think I've always traditionally had 24-inch tall tanks, and for the first time, my latest tank, my Peninsula tank, I did a 20-inch tall Peninsula tank, and it's 6 foot long by 3 foot wide, and I'm really digging the shorter, the less height on the tank. I really like it. Yeah.
See, I'm terrified of it because this is going to be a very, very big challenge for me. I'm used to now working with much, much larger aquariums, so I have more height, more length, more width. And my office nano cube back in the day was an utter failure because I wanted to put too much in it. And it looked great, but it failed because it failed for me. because I couldn't put all the things I wanted to put in it, and it frustrated me, so I had to get rid of it. Now this one is going. There's a whole bunch of different challenges. There's no sand. I've never done that before in my tank. You know, it's short, it's rimless, like all these things that I've never done for my personal tank, I'm now doing on this aquarium, and it's going to take a lot of meditation, probably.
Patience.
Scotch.
Yeah. What's mixed reef? What kind of animals you gonna have in there, coral wise?
I'm a big mixed reef fan. Because I love the different colors. I love the different textures, the movement, but I'm not 100% sure yet what direction I will take. I do know that I'm going to do only aquacultured corals.
A couple of questions and comments. So Remy says, ask about the lights though. He's teeing it up there, Raj, for
see, this is what I get for saying nice things about him. Yeah. So the light saga, right? I decided I had to try and become or be fancy with this thing, and decided to go with a Chihuly look, which is this blown glass. He does these blown glass exhibits, artwork. And I guess the timing hit where these glass blowers were going to do a lot of, I mean, it's right there at the holidays. So they're doing all these Christmas ornaments and really not much time for my stupid light project. So that has gone absolutely nowhere. I don't have one single piece from it yet, but Rich said he is going to make me some. I just have to send him info. So at least I might get some for Rich, and eventually these local glass blowers will get their mojo going.
I'm not fully understanding the concept. You're getting a glass blower to do what?
So what I was trying to do is hide the lights. And I wanted to do, I looked on Wayfair and I looked on Amazon, and, just looked for chandeliers, like these, hanging light fixtures, and something that I could hide a reef light into.
Gotcha.
Maybe just something that's already pre-made, prefabbed, and it's going to look more, I guess it's going to look less reef tank like, and more like a designer piece in a home. And so that was where I started off. And then I don't know how I got into this whole Chihuly thing, but then I thought, wow, that's going to look amazing. Let me see if I can find somebody to do that. And, just complicating.
I'm going to have to Google that, check that out. Rich Colombo, live rock or dry rock? You're doing dry rock, right? You're not
dry
a live rock guy.
Yep.
I think we debated that when I was on Reef Therapy.
We did. Yeah. See, that's what gave Remy his reef scabies.
Yes, I wonder how Remy's Carib Sea life rock is doing. I haven't seen any. Has there been an update on that? I don't know, Remy. You can chime in there in the on the chat, but I don't know. I have not had the greatest experience with my Carib Sea life rock. Not to knock any manufacturers out there, but it's been an algae producing deal. But
oh wow!
So getting back to the height of the tank. So the reason why I like the 20-inch tall tank is because, well, for aquascaping purposes, because I started that tank with live rock, so I didn't have like one of these fancy dry rock scapes put together by putty and rods and super glue and all that stuff. So I just I had the KP Aquatics live rock that I bought about over 100 pounds of it, and so it was easy because in terms of aquascaping, I just pretty much had stacked 2 layers of the rock, and try to be try to put together an interesting design that way. But the fact that it was only 20 inches tall, to me, I didn't really feel like I needed to go three layers of rock versus the 2 layers of rock. So it made it easier. And I also think that a lot of people do make that mistake, I think, of trying to kind of aquascape all the way to the top of the tank and not factor in the growth of the corals. But So mine is a bare bottom as well, and I've got a lot of flow cranking in there, and it's an SPS dominant tank. Well, it was. I'm in the process of resetting it, but it produced a lot of tabling acros, which I thought was a really cool effect. Yeah.
Ooh, that's cool. Yeah.
So I don't know. I like it, but yeah, I could see where it's different. You know, it is different.
Yeah, like aquascaping, that's going to be challenging. I mean, how do you aquascape 16 inches of height? And you have to have some rock, but then you're allowing room for coral. Well, that doesn't really leave you a whole lot of room.
Yeah.
That's what's going to be the biggest struggle for me. Like, I'm going to have a very, very difficult time with this tank.
Have you thought about in terms of what kind of dry rock you're going to be putting in there, or not yet?
Yeah, there's a couple of options actually, and I'm kind of excited to see each one and kind of weigh it out. And I haven't picked the one yet, but I'm leaning heavily towards one. I don't want to name it yet in case it ends up not being the one. But yeah, I'm excited about all the new, fake rock that's available these days. There's a lot of good products out there, and there's just a lot of selection, which is great.
And what's your game plan in terms of cycling the tank or getting that rock seeded?
I mean, I'll use the concentrated bacterias, but ideally, I don't know. Usually what I've done is I've taken seed sand from an existing system, but since this one's not going to have a sand bed, I may just go ahead and try this, the straight chemical route, and see what I can just naturally produce. I mean, eventually I'm going to have some microfauna in there, so I'll need to introduce that somehow. But yeah.
Amy says, my tank is 18 inches tall and my scape turned out great. Sand to water level is about 16 inches. And she also says, we believe in you, Raj.
At least somebody does, because I don't know if I could do it.
All right, man. So let's dig a little, bit deeper into MRC. And I think somebody, I think it was Paul, asked this question early on in the chat when we were talking about your reef keeping journey. And I think we didn't get to how you actually got to MRC.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, that was totally by accident, because it was a local company, and ended up meeting Tim. We hit it off, and I was at that put up or shut up moment and thought, okay, let's do this. And that was it. Jumped right into the middle of it, and
haven't looked back.
Haven't looked back. Yeah. Bought the company. And then we just took it from where it was and where it was going to where it is now. A completely different direction.
And how did you guys get into the big fabrications? I mean, that's certainly a unique side of the business.
Yeah. I mean, that was, back when China was just really entering the aquatics market. And what I saw happening, or what was going to happen, is that they were going to come in and offer just rock bottom pricing on products. And like, take a look at the Reef Octopus protein skimmer. If you look at what price point they entered the market in and what price point they're in now, it's completely different animals. So I knew what was going to happen is they're going to drive the pricing down way below any domestic manufacturer can do. I mean, they were selling complete products for less than the cost of materials alone. Wow. Now, obviously, there's different grades of material, but it didn't even matter. It was just so cheap. And that was a race to the bottom that I had no intention of winning. So just kind of looking at that landscape, saying, well, what part of the market can I pivot to where we're going to be somewhat shielded against that? And so that's where we shifted away from that mid-market and moved a little bit higher end, and then moved into the industrial end, because there was really not many companies dealing with the large scale things. Right? So the large scale equipment in the US was handled primarily by one manufacturer. Well, I like those odds. And so here we are, but we're the new guys, and we're an unproven tech in that space. And it wasn't an easy journey. We had a lot of work to do to prove that what we're doing and the way we're doing it, because it's different than what's been done in the past and the way that the current leader in that space is doing it. We had to convince a lot of people and prove to them that what we're doing is going to work and that it's better.
Right.
So it was a big risk, but it ended up paying off.
So, at what percent would you say at this point is, commercial? Your what percent of your business is like commercial versus hobbyist?
Oh, wow. There's a lot of crossover there. So it's tough to tell because, like Andrew's a hobbyist, but his is a commercial size system, right? So his system takes all of our I-Series products, and he's not the only one. There is a lot of guys out there and girls that are doing these large scale systems in a home or in their business that, technically would have been our public aquarium line. But so there's a lot of crossover there that we haven't makes it tough for us to really calculate that, because the easy thing is you just look at SKUs and say, is it this SKU or is it that SKU? But yeah, no, it's
sounds
I don't
like
know.
A hybrid, a lot of hybrid and
there is
hybrid accounts.
Yeah, there are. So, but really you're looking at, if I had to take it 60-40, 60% on the industrial side, 40% on the let's say hobby side.
So you guys are pretty much custom fabrication in terms of tanks, sumps, skimmers, reactors, the whole 9 yards, correct?
Yeah, so we have obviously just stock products, stock models, but full customization. And a lot of our products are going to be just custom done. So if it's an aquarium, we don't offer your standard 75, 120, 150. It's a custom aquarium. Our industrial sump, or most of our sumps that are going out, they're custom sumps. But we're the only full line aquatics manufacturer in the world. So we have products that can be used for small aquariums all the way up to industrial, including the exhibits themselves. So it's really interesting how we've kind of morphed into that. But yeah, tons of custom work, and that's where I can get my creative output. Is on those custom jobs.
And in terms of tanks, you guys are doing both acrylic and glass?
Yeah, so with the glass, we do our hybrid aquarium, where it's glass with a fully CNC'd Euro brace top. That's acrylic, and then acrylic overflow, and then you have a layered bottom. And so you get kind of the best of all worlds. You get your glass sides, you get a bottom that is unbreakable, and you can drill wherever you want to, however you want to.
I ain't drilling the bottom of any tank, I'll tell you that much. I don't care if it's like a bulletproof. You say it's bullet. I ain't putting any holes in the bottom of my tanks. I just I don't like bulkheads on the bottom of the tank or underneath the water line. I get a little queasy about, a little skittish about that.
Yeah, just use good quality bulkheads and you're good to go. Man. If you use the cheap ones, you're begging for trouble. But
I
hear you. I get it.
It's a thing that I have. But I know. Listen, I mean, it's a great way to go, because you could do a closed loop and you get some great flow going on the bottom of a tank. So but there's always risk.
I mean, there is always risk with anything, right? But in the larger tanks, your flow. The closed loops are still the best way to get that flow in the centers of the aquarium where your power heads aren't going to reach. No matter how powerful these power heads are, they just can't get through your rock work, and closed loop can.
So Sturgis Reef is making a comment. That must be tough bonding glass to acrylic. I've heard that before. What do you say to that, Raj, in terms of those two different materials being bonded together?
Absolutely. It's a multi-step process. So it's not like, glass to glass, you're siliconing them together, and it's very somewhat simple to do. But to get it to adhere to PVC and adhere well, it's a difficult process. It has to be done and timed just right, and every step has to be done just right. So yeah, it is very difficult to do.
So a custom aquarium, let's say, what's like the minimum size custom aquarium you would do for a hobbyist?
I mean, that's kind of a loaded question because we don't really we can build anything, but just at our scale, we're not really geared to do the smaller stuff efficiently enough. Um, so, other manufacturers can do that and get it to you at a much better price than we could. But we get clients that come through that want an MRC tank. And so we've done them as small as 15
Really?
gallons. And
Wow.
yeah, and it'll be something that I'm trying to talk them out of, be like, hey, just tell your client to go do this. Eh, but they want it. So for whatever reason, they wanted us to do it and we'll do it. But I've gotten better about just saying no on stuff like that. But I guess what? Uh, my tank is 120 gallons, so 100-gallon plus.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What about features of the different aquariums? Do you get clients that come to you and say, "I want this, that, and the other thing," and you guys find yourselves talking them out of certain things? Like, you mentioned
Oh, yeah.
rimless tank. I have never been brave enough to have a rimless tank. I've always gone with Eurobrace tanks. I always thought that Eurobrace tanks were a great great thing to have. But talk to us about stuff that you guys would consider to be standard in your kind of custom aquarium builds.
Well, like you, I like the Eurobrace brace tanks. I get it. The rimless tank is
Yeah, it looks cool.
sexy, but it looks cool when you're looking at it from a structural perspective, right? The engineer in me is saying the Eurobrace is the better way to go. I mean, it is. It's stronger, and it does provide you with some protection against
Yep.
spills. You stick your hand in there and that water level goes up, or you're creating a wave. The Eurobrace does contain that. And so things like that are where we guide people towards. And people will have these ideas that we know are just going to be awful. It's going to look great,
Yeah.
but you have to think ahead on the functionality side of it. It's like, will they be able to access these small little things, details that they want in the tank? Are they going to be able to access it to clean it? Because it might look spectacular day one, but as soon as you start getting all of that, the growth,
Yeah.
right, and your biofilms and all the microfauna in there, it doesn't look so great
Yeah.
anymore. So it's just things like that. And it's telling people these small details that they want are not going to work like they think they're going to work. And just having to tell them those hard truths makes it difficult.
What about overflows? I've always gone with a custom aquarium. The last, I don't know how many years that I've had, in terms of my aquariums, but I've always gone with external overflows because whatever mass manufacturer I would look at in terms of aquariums, they wouldn't have an external overflow. They would always have like an internal overflow. And I always thought that that was such a hindrance in terms of flow inside the tank. It doesn't look great. You get the coralline algae going on and the other stuff growing on that stuff, and it's just not a good look. So I've always gone with external overflows. I mean, is that something you always try to steer people towards?
I'm a bigger fan of internal overflows. I love them. And in most applications, the space doesn't have space, or the room doesn't have space for that external overflow, right? You need to be able to hide that somewhere. And when it's outside of that tank, you're going to have to encase it in, or it needs to be on a built-in or something like that. If it's internal, you can have your aquarium just backed up to a wall in any room, and it's going to be functional and look great. And if done right, it can be hidden.
Right. So you can kind of like have a almost like kind of a like a little hidden compartment on the inside of the tank.
Yeah. So what we like to do is trapezoidal overflows, because they blend in and just disappear. So if it's a black back with a trapezoidal overflow, you just don't see that it's there, as long as you keep it clean.
Big ES asking, clear or black silicone? What do you like? What do you guys?
I like black silicone, and that's what most, like 99% of people are choosing. Yeah, we offer both, and we even had white, but I didn't like the white at all.
Ooh,
yeah,
interesting.
Yeah.
Not sure I've ever seen a white silicone tank.
That's a good reason why. I hated the look. Just hated the look. But
Hey, thinking outside the box, right?
hey, somebody's got to
Somebody's
try
got to
it.
try it.
I think the guy loved it. The client loved it. So as long as he loved it, that's great. It's all that
Yes.
matters.
Amy, I'd 100% go Eurobrace on any tank larger than what I have now. Yeah, Eurobrace is also great because you could put like stuff on top of it, like when you're doing maintenance on the tank, and that's always. All right, Bucky Solomon is asking, how does the integrated HOUV work on the MRC sumps? Does it have enough dwell time to kill the velvet/ick? Well, let's back up a little bit and talk about the custom sumps, Raj. What's different with those sumps versus what else you can get on the market?
So you're talking about the our iSump, which is what he's referencing. Yeah, I mean those. It's funny because those we created for the public aquarium market, and that's where they stayed for years. And I don't remember. I think it was Jake. Jake actually posted about it because he came by, he saw it and was like, "Oh my god, that thing's phenomenal!" He took pictures and he wrote about it on Reef Builders, and that kind of introduced that product to the consumer market. And it's something that we thought there's no way that this is even remotely applicable to the consumer market. Man, I was so wrong. But people loved it. They loved the look, they loved the functionality, love all the different things we were doing with it, and that's just really exploded for us. But they are truly industrial grade sumps. They're built really strong. They're thick material. They're heavy duty, and they have features that you cannot get on a normal acrylic sump. So, like he's talking about, that's our integrated UV. Traditionally, if you want a UV, you have an external UV that you have to find the space for. You have to mount on the wall or, hoist vertically. It takes up a lot of room. It's heavy, and you have a lot of plumbing and valves that go along with it. A lot of leak points or leak potentials. With the integrated UV, it's just built into the sump. There's zero plumbing. There's no valves. The only thing you need to mount is the LED panel, and you're good to go. Right? You throw your water in, plug it in, and you're gone. You're off to the races. So it's phenomenal in that regard. But we have our own lamps made for us, our own sleeves. It's our own system, and our 50-watt lamp emits more UVC than competing 80 to 100-watt lamps. So that's what makes it our high output system. But dwell time, because they're all custom done, it's going to be custom designed based on whatever flow rate you're going to do and at what fluence rate you're trying to hit. So yeah, it absolutely can, and the systems are designed to do that.
So that was basically designed for the industrial side of the business. But then you also have another series called the Plus series, right? That was consumer.
Yeah, so Plus series was our consumer grade line, and I think I'm going to say damn near 100% of the acrylic sumps out there are all 1/4 inch, and we don't do the 1/4 inch sumps. Our Plus series sumps are 3/8 inch cast acrylic. So they're much heavier duty than what you're going to see. So, in cases where, like in a public aquarium, they're not neatly tucked in their stand. They're going to be out in the behind the scenes. People are going to stand on these things, and they do stand on them. So they're all built to withstand that. You can stand on all of our sumps. Even our acrylic sumps, you can pick them up by the bracing, and the sump isn't going to bow, it's not going to break. And you try that with a lot of the consumer grade sumps, you're going to break that sump like that. So just a very different, just a much more heavier duty sump. So if you look at our bio sump, that's got a biological chamber already built in with biomedia, which we created that for jellyfish systems for public aquariums. That's where that was born. And then we spun it from the public aquarium world out into the consumer market. And then that design got ripped off by, damn near everybody. And, it's funny watching how we get a certain number of years when we create something and introduce it to where we're going to have 100% of the market. And then you get all these different manufacturers and, people all over the place that copy it, and you see that market start to get chipped away a little
that's
bit.
pretty much undefendable. I mean, you can defend it, but then if you got a bottomless amount of money to defend it and time, then but that's crazy.
There's just, I mean, look, some things, yeah, you could probably do that with, but on something like that, we're already working on bigger and better things. It's just not worth the time and effort to try and squeeze some guy out in the middle of middle America trying to make a few bucks. It's not what we want to do.
So let's talk about skimmers, man. And so I was doing my research for this interview. I was on your MRC the website checking out some of the skimmers. Like, holy crap, man! These guys sell Beckett skimmers. I was like, nobody else. Yeah. Who else is still selling the Beckett injection skimmers? I was like, that was like those were like the need. I mean, that was like the kind of skimmer to have back a number of years ago. I used to have like a 50-inch tall dual injection and Beckett skimmer, and that thing kicked ass.
Yep, they did.
And you guys are still selling them.
We do, yeah, and a lot of them. It's really interesting because, I mean, you remember back in the day, like that was the skimmer to get, right? Beckett injection. We had, I think it was called Club MRC on Reef Central, where everybody was flocking to that. And the Zeovit system, that was the favored technology. So, Zeovit fans, and Zeovit comes in and goes out, and it's really all it is essentially just carbon dosing. So, but the Zeovit community had determined that that was the one to get, not needle wheel skimmers. So you still get demand from that community. Public aquariums still love them because they're workhorses. They like the tech, they like the dependability, they're used to it. And so that they use the hell out of them. Aquaculture facilities, pond and freshwater tanks. I mean, there's still a lot of case use for our Beckett skimmers. So look, we talk about this every year going, man, we've had this product line for a long time. Do we need to be moving on from it? And the demand is still there, so high that we just have to keep it and keep producing it.
And you guys don't have any needle wheel skimmers? You do? Okay,
we do.
So you got both.
We do. Our Pro Series, our needle wheel, and then our Industrial Series, the big skimmers, those are needle wheel.
Yeah, I just remember it being so reliable. I mean, obviously it was a space thing, right? Because it's not something that can easily fit underneath a tank, inside a tank stand if you've got like a 50-inch tall skimmer. I mean, that sucker's going to have to be behind the tank or...
Not that one, yeah. They're smaller models, but yeah, it was a couple of things, I mean, yeah, they are larger, and they required at that point bigger pumps. But now, the pump tech has really caught up, so you can use some of the smaller pumps on them, but they're still going to be larger, more powerful pumps than your equivalent needle wheel skimmers.
And the Beckett injection skimmers are all utilizing external pumps, or can some be internal? Can some skimmers be inside the sump?
No, they can be in some.
Yeah.
Back then, it was tough because you really didn't have very many submersible options. Now there's better pumps. I mean, you had the Danner Mags, but God, man, I hated that pump.
Yeah. I can't remember what I had Blue Line pumps, I think, but
yep, Blue Line is what we favor on them because they're just so good, so reliable. They're just solid. Yeah, and they're fantastic. I still love the Blue Line pump.
Yes, in fact, I do have an MRC calc reactor, and that's got a Blue Line pump on it, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That was when we came out with that one, the Blue Line, the caulk was destroying pumps.
Yeah.
It would not destroy that Blue Line pump. I mean, they just keep going.
Yes. That's what I remember. I always used to do like maintenance on that pump, and not really a lot to worry about in terms of the wear and tear on that pump. So we're getting into the reactor part of this whole thing, Raj, and calcium reactors. So we were talking a little bit about calcium reactors, and so you guys have a few different models, and one of the models looks very similar to one that I used to use years ago. Remember the company MTC, Marine Technical Concepts?
Oh yeah,
and that had I still have that.
They were blue.
Yes, and that has a They utilize blue line pumps on those skimmers, but I still have mine. And that was a great calcium reactor. You guys have a similar type of reactor. And talk to us about the dual versus a single chamber calcium reactor, because there's debate, I think, in the hobby. Some people feel like it's not necessary to have that second chamber. And the second chamber is essentially there to help absorb some of that excess CO2, right, from the first chamber, to help, you know, not suppress the pH as much that's coming out of the reactor. So can you speak to that, Raj, in terms of the reason why you guys are still selling the dual versus the single chamber? I mean, do you have any research on the fact that a dual chamber will provide an X% boost in terms of that pH that we're, you know, in terms of going? Okay.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we offer both, right? We have our single chamber, we have our dual chamber, and then we have our dual active chamber. But what you're referring to is that buffering chamber. And I mean, is it necessary? That really depends on the buffering capacity of your aquarium itself. So many aquariums, if they're like, if you don't have a sand bed, you've got reduced buffering capacity already. What's the only thing that's really going to buffer that is the rock. And then it's going to depend on how good is that rock. You know, is it, gosh, what was those Fiji blocks that were just solid, or is it porous? And that's where there's a lot of variability. So if your tank has that buffering capacity, you don't necessarily have to have that buffering done in your reactor. But you are going to introduce that excess CO2 into your system, and it is going to affect your pH. If your system can buffer it, fine. If it can't, I don't know. You know, it just depends on the system as to how much it actually does depress that pH.
What's your recommendation to most customers that are looking for a calcium reactor, dual or single chamber? Dual. Just to help the pH.
Just to help that pH, just to keep that stability, and, you know, to not waste that CO2. I mean, you've got an acidic solution that's exiting that main chamber. Why not use that excess up in that secondary chamber? And really, that secondary chamber, the buffering chamber, doesn't have to be anything special. It really just is going to hold more calcium reactor media, right? More aragonite. Let your effluent go through that and then enter your tank. So it's something that can be done on the cheap. It can be done DIY. And if you're looking at secondary chambers, they're not very expensive anyway.
And you guys sell secondary chambers, and those can be added to any calcium reactor, any manufactured reactor.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Universal.
Yeah. Aiden Horwood is asking, what does Raj think about Kalkwasser? So we've been talking about calcium reactors. What are your thoughts on supplementing that with a calc reactor or some other form of dripping calcium?
I love Kalkwasser. My favorite combination of when I had my big reef tank was I had my calcium reactor and my calc reactor going at the same time. And I tell you, I have never had such phenomenal results. And that's proven itself over and over and over again. And when you break it down a little bit, you're looking at two different types of calcium. You know, you've got calcium carbonate, calcium hydroxide. And so it's giving your corals two different flavors of the thing that it likes to uptake. And that to me is where the magic really lies.
I agree 100%, man. I think Kalkwasser, calcium reactor with a Kalkwasser, you know, in conjunction with that, man, you can't beat it. Just can't beat it.
I mean, you can't. It's phenomenal. I mean, it raises your pH back up. I mean, the alkalinity, it precipitates phosphates. I mean, what's not to love about it? And the calc itself is cheap.
Yeah.
There's not many things in this hobby that are cheap.
Yeah. No, that is very true. And there's various ways to do it, but it is a great combination. Makes total sense. It seems to have gotten a rebirth in the hobby.
And that's the funny thing about the hobby, because we see it on our side of these cycles that pop up. Refugiums are out. Ooh, refugiums are back in. Kalkwasser is out. Kalkwasser's back in. Calcium reactors do that. People are like, oh, I'm all into dosing. And then the calcium reactors come back in and then they go back out of favor. It's such a weird
I've gone in
phenomenon.
back and forth myself. I mean, I started out in the hobby doing 2-part dosing because I thought that was, for a beginner way back when I was a beginner, that was the easiest thing to do. And it's simple. And people, even people that have been in the hobby for a very, very, very long time, are still doing the 2-part or 3-part dosing because, it's simple, but it can get expensive if you have a larger system.
Yeah. It's expensive and it's a pain in
Yeah.
the ass. I was never a 2-part guy because I don't want to dose my tank every single freaking
Yeah.
day, man. I just don't want to do it. And you look at aragonite and you're just dissolving these coral skeletons, right? The makeup of what you're trying to build that has the perfect ratio. It has the exact formulation of what your corals need. All of it, all your trace elements, it's all there. And I don't have to touch this thing for 6 months to a year at a time. Sign me up.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, it's if you have a high demand for calcium and alkalinity, and you're dosing 2-part, then you're constantly. I mean, if you don't have if you got to dose by hand, manual, that definitely sucks. But if you got a doser, you got to stay on top of that because it's constantly like refilling the jugs and the doser is pulling from the for the parts the 2 parts. But yeah, so I've gone back and forth, but. Yeah, and one of the big reasons why I was doing that, it was simple at the time when I had a smaller tank. Plus, it helped keep the pH elevated, whereas the calcium reactor was suppressing it. So I think when you're running a calcium reactor, it makes a lot of sense to do Kalkwasser to keep that pH boosted.
Definitely.
All right, Bucky, I think you dropped this question earlier in the chat. Getting back to Andrew's system, did MRC come up with a solution to Andrew's degassing problem, and how difficult is it to solve? So, do you want to quickly explain what I think? When I had Andrew on, I think he was talking about it, but maybe just give a quick debrief on what the degassing issue is in Andrew Sandler's tank.
Yeah, so I mean, in Andrew's tank, he's got so much going on there, and there's multiple sources for that issue. And yeah, we've gone through, we've identified it, we've got a plan of action, and I'm actually going to see him in a couple days and kind of chat about that a little bit and start getting things into motion there. But yeah, no, his system it's funny, like watching that system from the first day I saw it to where it is now. Andrew's done a great job of really paying attention and listening and, kind of listening to his tank and saying, okay, something's not right. Let me figure out what to do here, and going through those motions. And I give a lot of credit to him for sharing that with everybody. It's like you make a mistake, you don't want to broadcast it. And it's the one thing that I love is being able to see that, man, he tried something, it didn't work, and he's showing that, hey, this is something that didn't work for me. And so we can all learn, which is phenomenal. But yeah, there's entrainment, there's entrapment, there's some low pressure issues.
It's complicated.
It's complicated. There's so many different things that are now combined together that are creating the problem. So it's not just one thing that has to be addressed. It's a bunch of little things that are just combining together to create a big problem.
It just blew my mind seeing that tank and all the equipment in person. It just blew my mind. I can't comprehend how that whole thing was engineered, but that's a whole nother thing. So we were briefly talking about UV in line with your sub. What is Infinity? Unbelievable water clarity.
The Infinity. That's our roller mat.
Okay.
And it's the largest roller mat with the highest flow rates available. And it's funny because Jake for years was kicking my ass over this thing, saying, you got to build one, you got to build one, you got to build a big one. And I was like, no, nobody wants a big roller mat. Roller mats are stupid. Nobody wants them. Socks are cheap. Socks are easy. Not doing it. And finally, right, got around, because I I thought that they were going to smell. And once we kind of, small ones went through multiple iterations in the market, and I got to use one. I was like, oh, this is actually really cool, and it doesn't stink. Maybe we should do a big one. And so that's how that came about. But yeah, it's just our automatic fleece roller, and it's pretty phenomenal. That is going on my tank build too.
Nice.
Which is going to look ridiculous because it's huge.
Do you have
I
love
have
a
it
separate
now.
room for the equipment behind the tank or something?
So most of the equipment is going under the stand, but I am putting the skimmer behind the tank just so I have better access to it, because I'm going to do a lot of, I'm going to take care of this tank, and the less I have to squat over and get under a stand, the better it is going to be for my back, and that's the route that I need to take.
That's right.
Because I'm just not going to do it
your
otherwise.
back, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to have to go back and do surgery on it.
Man.
I've been avoiding that. I've done everything other than, I actually even did acupuncture. My sister-in-law introduced me to it, and it was pretty great, actually. And so I'm going to give that a shot, but it's not going to be a long-term solution. And I'm looking and saying, well, I'm in my 40s now, and I can recover from a invasive surgery because it's in my spine. But if I have to deal with this in 10 years or 20 years when I'm 60, then what?
Yeah. All right. We'll best wishes for the procedure if that happens in the near future. So I asked you that question in terms of, are you going to have the any equipment behind the tank? Is that something that you guys try to point people towards in terms of remote equipment locations? Like if there's a tank that's going to be upstairs in a house, do you try to steer people to, like, you might want to consider having your the guts of the operation in terms of the equipment downstairs, where you'll have more room to service do the maintenance, or if there's a side room. I mean, my setup right here in the basement, I've got two systems in the basement, and I got one sump room off to the side, so it was a little kind of tricky in terms of getting the plumbing to work right on the same level. It's a lot easier because I've done it also in a house where you go downstairs to the sump and then pump back up. But is that something that I always like to say to people, like, if you can do a remote sump type of a setup, then that's always ideal.
100%. Remote sump and filtration room is where it's at. If you can maintain your system standing up with clear access to everything, you're more apt to do it, and you're going to do a better job of it. The more difficult it is to maintain, the less you're going to maintain it. I mean, I tend to design things based on how I am, right? And if I hate doing something, I just assume that the next person's going to hate doing something. And it's played out quite nicely. So, having now a lot of that filtration underneath my tank, again, it's going to be challenging for me because I'm not used to it anymore. Now, on smaller systems, it's fine. You can get away with it under the tank because you just don't need as much space. But, larger systems, or even on a smaller system, if you have that back room or downstairs, nothing beats it.
Yeah, my largest tank, when I was really getting into the groove in terms of reef keeping, was a 120-gallon tank, and it was an in-wall tank, and it was the first house my wife and I moved into, and so we had our contractor build in a closet behind the wall. So that was kind of like my equipment room. Was like, I had this really cool in-wall tank, and then you couldn't see any of the equipment. There was no stand or anything that was visible. It was just like a wall. And, I mean, that's got its pluses and minuses too, because it's sort of like one-dimensional. You're not getting to see the sides of the tank, or even like look, top down or that stuff. But it was also practical in the sense that I had a closet behind it with all the equipment. So, just kind of, I guess, kind of like neat little things like that you could bake into a project.
Yeah. If you have that luxury of getting that room built, man, go for it. That's awesome.
One last thing I wanted to ask you about in terms of MRC stuff is the pumps. You've got this Hydrotech pump line. What can you tell us about that?
Well, again, just like with what we do, they're born in the USA. There's a seal manufacturer actually here located in Georgia. That's all they do are seals. And on these external pumps, that's kind of the big issue that people run into. And, there's a popular manufacturer for many years. And one of the big issues they had back then was seals. Now it's transformed into other issues because the motors are, different motors now. But so top quality seals, good motors, all put, built here, with a 5-year warranty at a very, very attractive price. We just needed something for ourselves, really. We needed something that we can use on our own products, because our protein skimmers are going to use these pumps, right? Our industrial skimmers use our motors, our Pro Series use our motors. So we needed something anyway that we can consume with our own products. And so offering that product for a flow was the next natural progression for it. And they're efficient. That's what people don't really pay attention to, is the efficiency of the pumps.
And how do you measure efficiency? Just the amount of watts that they're drawing?
Oh yeah, right. You look at the watts, or the gallons per watt.
Watt.
So you take let's say our LP 4200, which is a low pressure pump, 4,200 gallons per hour, right? Compare that to a very nice DC pump that puts out about 3,700 gallons per hour, I think it is. Our pump uses 154 watts. The DC pump uses 200 watts, right? Almost 30%, or yes, 30%.
That's a big difference
on a DC pump. That's a big difference.
That's a big
you're looking
difference.
That's a huge difference. So with our pump, you're getting 27 gallons per watt, and you're going to get about 18, 19. So there's a big difference in what you're getting. And then you look at the cost of the pump, right? Ours is 500. That pump, I think, is about 2,500. So 5 times the cost to use more power and get less flow.
What's wrong with that equation?
All right.
Doesn't add up.
Doesn't add up. Now, don't get me wrong. I use that DC pump on projects all the time. It's a fantastic pump, and it has its case use. But for most people, the $500 option is a way better option.
I hear you. All right. The last question of the evening, Raj, is going to come from Bucky. And I've never heard of this. Have you ever used rotary drum filters, RDFs, on large
RDSs
on large reefs? Do they work well in salt water?
We don't really use them on large reefs.
What is a rotary drum filter?
Drum filter. So it's essentially a big screen, and it's done in a cylindrical drum, and you have your water being sprayed through that screen. And it deals with high flows.
Okay.
So, I don't see them on reef tanks. I have never used one on a reef tank. You see them on much larger scale systems. You see them on the freshwater side mostly, and mainly because they didn't really have anything that was able to work on the saltwater side. There's some stuff coming out of Europe now that are smaller and that are created for the saltwater hobby. So we'll see how that works out with reef tanks, because, we've got calcareous algae to deal with. So if you're going to get that kind of buildup on there, it's really going to affect the performance of these things.
Yeah, Great Bearded Reef Paul says you see them on ponds.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Tony Reeferoni, what kind of watch is on the wrist tonight, Raj? I guess that's the final question.
That's this is one of my favorite daily watch, but it's my Omega. Let's
nice.
see if that comes through. Yeah.
Sweet.
And it's there
watch.
it is. So I love chronos. I'm just obsessed with them. I don't know why, but I love the way they look. I love the dials. I love like the complexities. And this one's actually a sailing watch. So it's titanium. Nice. So it's large, but it's lightweight. And the rubber strap on it is just so comfortable that I can wear it with ease, and I just love this thing. It's great.
I've got a Wenger.
Hey.
All right, man. Any final words? Did we miss anything? Do you did we what have we not covered here, Raj?
I don't know. I think we covered the whole gamut.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, man. I appreciate you being on. Any final words there before we sign off? Anything you want to plug?
Just thank you so much for chatting with me, having me on. I had a great time. And
likewise, man. It was a great chat, getting to know you more, and appreciate you taking the time, dude.
Yeah, you coming out to Reefstock?
It's going to be like a kind of a last minute decision for me, I guess. What is the deadline in terms of getting into Reefstock? I mean, you could buy tickets a day up, right? I can't do that, but
you can. Yeah, you can. Just show up. You better be there. And then you've got two chances. You've got Chattanooga, and if you've never been down to Chattanooga, it's a phenomenal city. It's a small city. It's right there in the mountains. You got so much to do outside of the reef show, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait for that one.
And the website's Reefstock.
Reefstock.show.
Reefstock.show. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, listen, Raj, thank you so much again for being on the show tonight. And I also want to thank both Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine for sponsoring it. And thanks to all you folks out there for tuning in. And big thank you to Paul, who's the moderator, who's also the president of the Boston Reefer Society. That was the plug for having Reefstock in Boston.
I love
Please
Boston.
Join and support your local reefing clubs. They are so important to this hobby. I also want to let you know all episodes of Rappin With ReefBum are available as podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Amazon. My next Rappin With ReefBum will be on next Tuesday, January 16th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My guest is going to be Bobby Miller, a.k.a. Humble Fish. We're going to be talking about identifying and treating fish disease. So please tune in. If you want to check out the full upcoming schedule of guests on Rappin With ReefBum, visit reefbum.com under the YouTube section. Until then, be safe and be well. Later.
Bye.